Welcome back to Offbeat Gyan. Today's video is on When Memory Dies, Book 2, Chapters 5 to 9. Chapter 5. Rajan has scored only a third class in the final degree exams. His parents are disappointed, but he acts indifferent. He has sent job applications, but he does not take any further efforts. He is a graduate with a third class, and the only option that is available to him is teaching. But he hated teaching. He was very ambitious, and he found teaching to be low paid. His uncle, Uncle Jnanam, told him to become a teacher. He himself had wanted to be a teacher, but had not appeared for the Cambridge Senior and London Matric exams. Jnanam was deeply angry with the British regime, and he was gradually losing his mind. His mother wanted to throw him into a lunatic asylum because he was proving to be a constant embarrassment for someone like her. But Sahadevan prevented this from happening and brought him home. From then on, Uncle Jnanam started staying with Sahadevan and his family. Lal and Lali, Rajan's close friends, also wanted him to teach as he would learn more about the country. Rajan himself had no passion for teaching. He wanted some other high profile job like his other friends. His other friend, Kannaya, had already become a teacher and joined a school in the remote southern region of Sri Lanka. Coming on to an important character in the novel, Lali. Lali is someone who had very strong beliefs. She was a calm and composed person, and she was not malicious. She berated Rajan for his indecisive nature. She was an emotional person who was committed to her beliefs. She never tries to impose her opinions on others, and she was not dominating. Lal was just like her. Both had faced a lot of difficulties in life. They had sacrificed a lot. And so they accepted life. They faced the challenges. A close bond developed between Rajan, Lal, and Lali. Rajan and Lali. Rajan fell in love with the lovely Lali. He was vexed and irritated because he felt that she refused to acknowledge his deep love for her. He felt that he could not speak openly to her about his love because he did not have a job. He wanted to marry her. She treated him with a certain reserve. There was so much unsaid between them. But one day, Rajan confesses to her about his love and he proposes to her. He told her that he was going to become a teacher. She asked him to take up a job in the interiors where students needed teachers like him. The very thought of leaving her and going away made him sad. At the same time, Lali did not make any commitment to their relationship. They continued to be good friends. Lali, in fact, refuses to marry him. Rajan assumed it was because he was Tamil or because of Sena, who had passed away, who had been violently killed in the strikes, which I have mentioned in the earlier video. Lali said to him that his parents would have problems accepting a Sinhalese daughter in law. But there was something else too, which she refused to talk about. Rajan was deeply hurt and angry. He left Lali's house, decided that he would not come back to Lal's house or meet them again. But then he meets Lal and they go to a small hotel and talk. Lal asks Rajan about his bad mood. Then they talk about the political situation in Sri Lanka. Rajan's pain is soothed by the conversation with Lal and his attitude of accepting all the challenges thrown at him. Lal was someone who would never accept defeat. They talked about Dockyard David, who was a trade unionist and a sincere workers' leader. Lal talks about Guna Sinha and his communal politics, his selfishness, and the end of his Labour Party. He explains about ruthless politicians who had taken away power from the ordinary people and exploited them. Lal is Rajan's political awareness teacher. Lal guides Rajan in politics and also in life. Sahadevan informs Rajan that his friend Obeshegara The Nuwara Eliya postmaster had informed him about the vacancy for a graduate teacher in Holy Cross College. Rajan tells his father that he was willing to go and work in Holy Cross College, Nuwara Eliya. Sahadevan is relieved. Holy Cross College is described in chapter 6 of the novel. It was more like a school than a college, and it was run by the Anglican Church. The headmaster was an extremely ambitious man called John Jameson Ranatunge. He was called JJ by everyone. He needed a graduate like Rajan to train his students for the senior school certificate examination so that his students could join university. He had eloped with a wealthy Tamil girl called Honoria Ramanathan on the eve of his graduate degree examination, which he failed to write. Both had spent some time in England, and Honoria had completed her degree and she had become the head of a posh girls' school in Colombo. JJ was a chauvinistic, malicious, and devious man who chose to run the school in Nuwara Eliya. Rajan soon realized that JJ was not as he appeared. Rajan soon became the most popular and most loved teacher in the school. JJ was jealous of him and tried to throw him out of the school by accusing him of being too familiar with the students. Rajan was very lonely. He missed Lali. He was still deeply in love with her. His only friends were Vadivel and Mrs. Azir, but he could not be as intimate with them as he had been with Lal and Lali. He missed Lali's knowledge of him and her advice. He missed her presence. Rajan soon joined a club and he started drinking. Once he went to a class with a hangover and was irritated and angry with the students. JJ immediately demanded his resignation and announced it in the assembly. But JJ's favorite student, Jaya, and a few others refused to appear for the examination if Rajan left. Thus, Rajan was saved from himself by his students. He stopped drinking and going to the club. He apologized to his students and he devoted himself to help his students pass the senior school certificate examination. One day, a week before the exams, he had a telegram from Lal informing him about Lal's mother's death. Rajan could not leave immediately because of his students' exams, but as soon as the exams got over, he left for Colombo, but he could not meet Lali. Leela, his sister, was getting married to a distant relative, so after the engagement, he went to meet Lal. In between, there is a conversation between Rajan's mother Neela and Rajan. Neela questioned him about his affair with that Sinhalese girl. Rajan tries to evade the question, but she is very sharp for him. He also realizes the fact that he had always taken his mother for granted, but she was someone who gave her love abundantly and was an extremely intelligent woman. Rajan goes to Lal's house after the engagement. Lal had married Hema, his friend from university, and he had set up his clinic in Hatton. He was about to leave for Hatton. Suddenly, Lali comes into the room with a baby in her arms. Rajan is shocked and can't accept that it is Lali and Sena's baby. Lali explains that on the eve of the strike, when Sena was killed, both of them had made love. And Sena had been very persistent and Lali had given in. And this was the reason why she had refused Rajan's proposal, because she did not want Rajan to marry her out of pity, and she did not know how Rajan would react to the situation. Rajan is shocked and pained. He is shocked and pained that he had been absent when Lali was going through so much, but at the same time, he is also angry with Lali. He is unable to say anything because at that point of time, he is unable to accept the baby in her arms. At this moment, Lal rushes into the room. Angrily, he asks Lali to admit to Rajan that she loved him. He shouted at Rajan that if he was not man enough to accept her, then he must go back and continue drinking and escaping from life because Lal knew what all was happening in Nuvara Elia. He knew about how Rajan had gone into a depression and was drinking himself into trouble. Rajan brushes away all unkind thoughts from his mind. He kneels down before Lali. He proposes to her and he says that he will have the child too. She says that she did not want to marry him because he felt pitiful towards her. But both of them express their deep love for each other, and Rajan loves the child Vijay deeply. Everything is sorted, and they decide to marry. Chapter 7. Lali and Rajan get married in April 1955 in Anuradhapura in the registrar's office. Only Lal and the Patiranas, Sena's family, came. Sahadevan and Neela had not approved of the marriage because Sahadevan was very concerned about what society would think of the marriage between a Tamil Rajan and a Sinhala Lali. Lal had just had a baby, so his wife couldn't come. Uncle Para did come all the way from Galley because he felt someone from the family must be with Rajan. Para and Sahadevan had had a disagreement over Para leaving his railway job, and he had left everything and gone back to Sanlipe. Rajan moved to a school in Anuradhapura so that baby Vijay could be close to his grandparents, Sena's parents. Rajan had already been warmly welcomed into the family by them. He wanted to be away from Colombo as he did not want to embarrass his parents any further. Rajan, Lali, and Vijay lived in a small rented house near Newtown. They were very popular and no one knew that Vijay did not belong to him. He had already given Vijay his name and they were happily settled there. Rajan loved the little boy. Life was good. They spent a lot of time at the Padirana farm. Lal came visiting with his wife and daughter. His clinic was growing rapidly and he continued with his political work. One evening, Dr. Fonseca, the district medical officer who was Lal's friend, came visiting. Dr. Fonseca was a firm supporter of Bandaranaike's Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which advocated Sinhala nationalism and Ceylon only for the Ceylonese, the Sinhala Buddhists. Lal hated Fonseca's politics, although he himself was a Sinhalese, and he belonged to the LSSP. Arguments over political beliefs began, and Hema left the room with her baby. Lal's political fervor and his activism was taking over his life, and Hema was worried about it. Lali also leaves the room after her. The SLFP had been democratic in the beginning, giving equal importance to Tamil and Sinhala. But then Banda or Bandaranaike had changed tune to capture more votes. He said that if he came to power, then Sri Lanka would be for the Sinhalas only. The Tamils would have to go back to India. Lal explains that people like Rajan, who spoke English, could move to the west. But what about the ordinary Tamils who had worked to build Sri Lanka? The estate Tamils, where would they go? Their sweat and labor had made the country, and Sri Lanka was their country too. They had nothing in India. Lal soon quit the LSSP because it joined the SLFP and they won the elections. Banda used the dangerous and powerful cards of religion and language to win votes and capture power. The situation in Sri Lanka became volatile and violent. The Tamils began to be treated as outsiders, and Sinhala became the national language. Rajan learned from Sahadevan that Tissa was a senior member in the SLFP. Lal was worried, and the communal situation worsened in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, Neela wanted Rajan to bring Lali home. Both of them, Sahadevan and Neela, loved Lali, but Sahadevan hesitated to welcome her home. Neela challenges him to accept the situation and not wait for society's approval to accept his daughter in law. Laughingly, Sahadevan asks Rajan to bring Lali home. Rajan's sister Premi had wanted to become a lawyer. Sahadevan agrees to that also. Then his mother told him to tell Uncle Jnanam before he fell asleep. Rajan goes to Uncle Jnanam's room and finds that he has died in his sleep. Chapter 8. Rajan returns to Anuradhapura and tells Lali about the eventful week in Colombo. Rajan adored and loved Lali and Vijay. Lali informs him about the burning down of a boutique owned by a Tamil man called Ponnan. Things soon take a turn for the worse. Ponnan and his wife were harmless people who had been trapped by the ruthless and rumor mongering Mrs. Elapola. They soon sold the shop to her and left for India. Lali demands that they must visit Sanlipe. Soon, Sahadevan and Neela come to visit them, and Lali takes great efforts to cook special dishes that both of them loved. It is a happy time for the family, and Rajan falls more deeply in love with Lali. After that, they go to Sanlipe. Lali discovers the huge difference between the prosperous southern part of Sri Lanka and the dry, barren, neglected, infertile north, comprising of Jaffna, where most of the population lived and people subsisted on fishing and palmyra cultivation. She gets along well with Rajan's relatives and is very comfortable discussing politics with Uncle Para. All the conversations that she had with Uncle Para, she used to write it down in her diary. Uncle Para was living there. He supported himself with a little farming and cattle rearing. Her cousin Vinita was in Jaffna, and one day she goes to meet her, and she finds that the Jaffna she used to love had changed. Jaffna used to be welcoming, but it has become intimidating because of the changing politics in Sri Lanka, because of rising Sinhala nationalism. The new and communal brand of politics had created polarization, hatred, and animosity. All Sinhala boards were defaced, and anti Sinhala feeling was on the rise in the Tamil dominant Jaffna area. Chapter 9, the last chapter of Book 2. Rajan, Lali, and Vijay returned to Anuradhapura. Anti Tamil feeling was on the rise in Anuradhapura. The Sinhala Buddhist monks were whipping up sentiments. The Tamils must go back to India. Ceylon was for the Ceylonese. Rajan and Lali were deeply disturbed. Rajan had always thought of himself as Ceylonese first, but now his roots were in question. His roots were deprived of the life giving rain. Para had told Lali that there would be conflict between the Sinhalas and the Tamils, and communal conflict was going to be the reality of the future. The talk between the Sinhala leader Banda and the Tamil leader Chelva had failed. Only Sinhala Buddhists had voting rights after April 9. It is actually after April 9. I have added a the there which shouldn't be there. Neela died on the same day. Neela is Rajan's mother. Rajan goes home, missing his mother and mourning the loss of the land that was once united and peaceful. He is not able to make out the difference. Is he mourning for his mother or is he mourning for his country? Rajan started hating Lali for being Sinhala. He blamed her for silly things, that she couldn't make rasam, that she used to sweat. All these things irritated him, and they slowly drifted apart because of Rajan's anger at the changing political situation. Rajan was planning to go to Colombo to attend a meeting of the Tamils. He had not told Lali about it, he had just hinted at it. She did not try to stop him because he wouldn't listen to her. But then he did not go. Lali comes back home and she is relieved to find him and she hugs him and embraces him. And she tells him that the train to Colombo had derailed and all the Tamils had been beaten up. The situation became worse. Tamils were being attacked. One day, Dr. Fonseca comes to their house and asks them to come and stay in his house as the situation was becoming bad. They stay along with many other refugees in Dr. Fonseca's house. The Prime Minister Banda refused to call the army and control the rising communal tension and violence, but then international pressure comes down on him and he has to call the army to bring about law and order in a chaotic situation. Rajan deeply sought the presence of Lal because Lal was a sane voice in the madness around him. But Lal sends him a deeply apologetic letter. Lal feels guilty because he is a Sinhalese, and the Sinhalese nationalism is responsible for Rajan and other Tamils being treated like outsiders. He wrote that race and religion would change Sri Lanka forever. He felt the hopelessness of the poor coolie patients he treated, and he was feeling sad and worried about the dark future that awaited them. He asked Rajan in the letter he had written to take care of Lali and Vijay. Rajan went to meet Sahadevan the next week. Saha had resigned from his job because of the attitude of the Sinhala colleagues and the ill treatment of the Tamil colleagues. He had not been able to raise his voice against it. He felt that it was better if he resigned. Tissa had come to meet him to persuade him to take back the resignation, but Sahadevan had made up his mind and he refused to go to Sandlipay. His country had betrayed him, but he would not leave it. Vijay also was deeply affected by the events around him. Once upon a time, he had been a cheerful, lively child who welcomed everyone and was very happy. But the events around him made him sad and depressed. He was deeply disturbed and he had bad dreams when he shouted out for his mother. Times were changing and they were bad. They decided that Vijay must stay at home with them rather than being sent back and forth between his grandparents and parents. They found a young woman with a child of Vijay's age who would come and stay when Lali and Rajan went to work. They had to go to Polanaruwa to bring her. The three of them left to bring the young woman and her son in a van. It was a fatal and tragic journey. They had had a good journey and a picnic, but their van broke down during the second half of the journey. They had met a couple of uncouth Sinhala laborers earlier. One of these men had kept on staring at Lali. When their van broke down, these men met them again. They spoke rudely about Lali, and then the situation worsened. Rajan knew that he could not fight them off. They were stronger than him, they outnumbered him. Then the men asked him his name. He said he was Ratnayake. They asked him to utter a few Buddhist gathas. Rajan recited the little he had been taught by someone, and they sensed that he was Tamil. The men, including one called Carolee, started attacking him. Lali heard the commotion. She was inside the van trying to help Vijay to sleep. She comes rushing out of the van. She brandished a stick at them and called out Rajan by his name. The miscreants attacked him because he had fooled them. They called him a Tamil bastard and they beat him up. He lost his consciousness. And then, one by one, they raped Lali and they mutilated her body. Rajan was not allowed to see her. He was not allowed to see her mutilated body. And that is how Book 2 comes to an end with the death of the gentle, lovely Lali.